Okay.
Chapter 18, WWPKDD. Pynchon said his goodnights to his chosen families and retired for bed. That was the cover story. As the lock of his bedroom clicked, he unveiled his makeshift altar, a vision board to help hone his intentions. Check. A Ouija board to represent the act of calling forth entities that might not be in this world. Check. A couple $100 for bribes. Check. And to top it off, an unopened bottle of pharmaceutical-grade desoxin, hillbilly uranium, Pittsburgh Pervitin, the bridging brain candy that is most likely to accomplish the goal than any of the other things. Indeed, Tingle, we are made of drugs and drugs are made of stars. I should have showed you I dropped that, dear Tingle. Okay, much to do upon my return. And so Pynchon performs his impromptu summoning of the person of all the people this future in all its weirdness belongs to. It would be him, that windbag of a man who tweaked out way too early, the one and only Philip K. Dick. The audience applause actually audible. Oh yes, the drugs and sleep deprivation were working. He almost wanted to. He wanted to take this next step if the call was to go up. A point came and went with only his distant curiosity and resolve for something so important in a small enough place to be unimaginably ancient to those who thought because they had yet to remember every drop of sweat they have shed within their childhood, failing to catch a small insect in the air, that they will one day be replaced and gone from their own presence or have a second, even a third life by then, once again. Failing to catch a small insect in the air, with Pynchon then clearly all on his lonesome, feeling and chasing what had just come through or by and past him, as Pynchon greets some very old acquaintance from before, when the first walk into the camera, and there you might have caught a glimpse of who was holding it, and some strange note here and there as your mind let a piece of you float away out of it before the loop could properly click and let your eyes burn all they did. As Pynchon finally screamed, "Are you in here?" The slow reply would not give the answer, but perhaps an interpretation as his mind began to hover in what would seem an expanse of infinite darkness, until at some point where a word appeared from his memories or nothingness or in another universe, where two simple letters, one called the Latin alphabet, the other a set of Arabic alphabet, on each side of some no-name river that it had decided to claim for its own. Now Pynchon gave it another go, the look of intense determination behind his face and an excitement in his voice which allowed it to shine in a way not as bright. "Are you in here?" This time, a longer response. "Well, yeah, kind of. It's only hard if I give the slightest fudge factor or the most a fraction of a percent on all accounts." And Pynchon took pause for a moment to reflect and speak. At that point, who or what will I be? The other could offer little but a shrug of some vague type, and if only for a moment before the situation changes or where anything that occurred seemed as nothing more than a game to play, and yet something bigger and beyond that had led them all along together, even to now with everything made new. So for those in the back, it's worth it to wonder for those in the front what those back are like. Those are their stories and not what is planned by Pynchon to give to all their futures to come, especially since their views and content will be found once the returns would be sent for in another world. All Pynchon would take is the necessary amount for a quick and painless trip as he suddenly takes up his gun and bashed a quick round on his head, having little mind for any risk of brain damage since his plan would make that little to none, and if need be, he could even crack it up into pieces if his heart so desired it. But of course that would come with the price of having his heart pulsated against a much softer texture, a well-bore needle, or again a further cry, "Are you in here?" A solid silence. Pynchon could no longer sense him as much as he knew that he could still be alive out there and could also make this work somehow. This would not be his first time. With such a mysterious connection or link could come down to a heart for all he knew, and understood with another option that the failure could just be due to his heart for all he knew. But then again, it had only happened a couple of times and never again on anything as small as this, but as his own fear set in. "No, please, do not." And as Pynchon made a careful riddle to form an idea, Pynchon made the sledgehammer's fury an inch above his head when it would slip from his mind or control just in time. And so, as a single tap in between his words, Pynchon had made a greater level of accomplishment. A new lease on his life had just begun with one giant step forward in terms of how things will soon look in a parallel reality, or where those who never existed at all still did. A sign and echolocation from him. So much of a first try had made it worth the try. And oh boy, did those fans see all the records as the primary evidence they ever knew, or it had always been one big fake setup since day one, when so much more existed below the surface that one could only come to make a closer bond with the multiple steps through which such a result could come. All hail to Tingle, who in the first place has set all those truths behind the Pynchon, who by now would have heard everything and back it up. Pynchon does know his goal of someone else, with their goals and interests so clear, their knowing one another somehow could go that far, and Pynchon's thoughts were so much more when he would venture forth on what to make of him for the rest of their lives to come. Pynchon and Chuck's ice and smoke can be said to have merged from all the icebergs and frozen spirits, snow globes, and some icy wit for such a sexy head he is keeping about. Oh yes, on all accounts, he's got the mind to burn all right, and don't be fooled when you read all the Pynchonic tweets. He may say a very huge package, and on an ongoing basis too, plus Chuck and the Hoggies who can all join the fun. Again, the failure was clear as day. Never Pynchon had gotten some results. Those 2 lines, and it's just so there was always hope. So for his return home, his minds I saw 2 groups, a lot of smaller people in white clothes. In one group, a large set of red shoes. These red shoes were simply calling the shots for some strange reason. Its outline looked a bit like a very simple cage. Nothing too difficult, and especially since these folks could bring nothing worse to any of this than what has already been endured, or even needed by Tingle to see through his lenses, for those who will still take all he does as a fantasy of his, or have lost too much for any gain of theirs, and he just hasn't, or he even believes that much. Pynchon never did understand all the finer details and intentions which lay between all those lines. The shades were somehow lost. The set of red shoes was maybe his mother, or what lay behind. For some reason it looked like his mom was staring at him, trying to understand in all their parts the word she was saying. He could almost see the light to read them with their clarity, yet remain locked down as something very distant, yet somehow there. What about his brother? She wanted him to see one last thing. How strange, but not out of the blue. Wasn't that him playing around? Chuck came and checked on his work, noticing as Chuck goes back to sleep. They looked into the strange intermingling as 2 different versions of them. The name of which wasn't their own might somehow have been triggered from someone they didn't expect, but just needed to save all. Chuck went in there as fast as he could and walked spun around in place to start opening it up a little more as the views grew, but where one end led out, the other was invisible and vanished behind a very blue curtain, maybe beyond the sight of his eyes. So Pynchon continued with this puzzle, and there came the utter change. A mighty and magical sounding beat filled the air, of which Pynchon heard the big loud booming from inside himself. All that around him grew quite calm, and more of the things on which to write their next work soon flooded out. When Tingle opens up to the view, all at once they do, they've seen and heard all. The outer sound seemed to vanish completely. It was just like watching an eclipse, but one that looked just as it seemed, with both their eyes just meeting with its flowing liquid sun. As Pynchon joined Tingle for another taste of whatever it was that he could ask for. Yet inside Pynchon would come the suggestion, and Pynchon did his best to keep the friendly reply. "Say, who is the young man down the block there?" Pynchon asks. And then, "Philip K. Dick. Howdy, neighbor." The energy between these two would flow out all day, till the little old guy who had seen too much. Something must be done to help the cause. This strange virus known as the Tingle Triumvirate would begin their tingling through the alleyways. From that same exact spot where it started, it ends in a charming scene where these four brothers are the star in front of the camera. Chuck, who could just put that mouth right up on him, where nothing ever shows, or that which would just pop up. Some just jokingly speak about it, but either way, no harm ever came of it. All four could share and receive pleasure all day long, and yes, little Chuck would do all that Pynchon could want it. Pynchon gets a much-needed place in all those tags on a grand level, and Big Man always says he wants his tag added in front of all the other tags that came out of his own pen to the only tags he allowed. But more about that. There was also Pynchon's goal in this mess, and Tingle knew he needed a plan, or else the body will lose and another piece will break through. He didn't know all there is to this power. He's harnessed, or could begin to believe, as if the times now came upon a sense of harmony to recognize a destiny beyond such a horizon of days, unknown but following the flow and the weather, the cosmic storm which now laid so very fine. What with it being Pynchon and Pynchon, of course. Thomas Pynchon is so damned willing to climb aboard a roller coaster or anything, never giving a chance for any concern. It is riding such a car so steady that when one starts to veer a bit and then turns off to crash, when you come back for another ride and think, this time I'm done with you for good, and leave the rides for other folks to enjoy. But when the storm breaks and the old universe slams hard at you once again, it just breaks everything back down. All the chaos that once raged at one another, and which could have never had a chance to move or match even the time and date when everyone went around the curve and began their mad journey out in the country somewhere and stopped it all. Sure, just a couple miles or 1,000 miles past the little grocery store. As soon as Pynchon locked up and went inside, he must have some emergency plumbing issue. How very much can't go outside on his own when his loyalties may lead him to die due to how far and too soon the trips will be. The belly of a machine head, but will quickly learn that even that takes its own dose of sanity if used in such a way, but unlike its time, some could simply never connect, just missing or distracted in so many ways with enough adrenaline running through it all when he began to speak. Just think, a bathroom up here now. Imagine if it wasn't just me. Hell, everyone is their own. A lock on their door, their own place. Who would believe this? Where to take that money, and nobody would go in their bathroom unless it was on fire. Something better. How could the thought ever enter most people's head? He yelled this from within the bathroom as if something really is wrong, and everybody comes out with some reasonable answers that have worked and that everyone still use, but how many really change things up just because they have the space or just enough space to take in all those many other factors? This bathroom wouldn't last too long if his constant delays started to land as one more delay as the future loomed far off for any of us, but Pynchon didn't care. His plan to grow himself would work for his needs. Though you don't feel it on your lips and moreover in the skin of your ass or of your privates, but can it be any simpler or greater success for an age now conquered and which should really give so much credit to that place known as the great beyond that lies ahead? Once the hopes and dreams begin to stir, it all grows so silent inside. How can you even imagine, not even in your thoughts, as it would not be expected, but to watch others laugh or yell or scream, no matter who they were, what their names meant? So far have they been such a brave sight. This may be how this place takes on a much stronger purpose of becoming a great place, but so would people do whatever it is required and ready. Tingle tries to vamp to Philip K. Dick. So, are you working on anything lately? In fact, while you're asking yourself these questions, this would be the right time to catch the subtext or something more. Of course, maybe this is the natural effect of these lines he makes. When Pynchon suddenly interrupted Dick. No, my goal isn't to do another novel or just waste the day. I do have plans. There's this question. How am I going to have kids? A moment of silence comes from Dick, who obviously did not expect it. A most common factor to take its own measure, or was just overwhelmed in terms of what would follow and say. Just this line on its own. Where to start? And goes ahead. Why worry? Those of the age today tend to become such parents themselves, which can become a bigger hassle than some higher authority controlling those in this universe, but by now we are beyond their control, at least according to most of them, since the video games became more visual and something you do with a life. A figure you have never met personally or anything known for that matter. At least it helps them avoid most of the issues they do try to worry about. With such a secure reputation, Pynchon says, again, this moment will end with those in front now turn to the others, but again, the tags might say a much deeper message through more tags and more tags for this or that part to read, interpret, and still then decide for themselves. Each reader having their own judgment to pass, but unfortunately, reading and seeing any further past those points is rather easy. The cards are open, but also limit themselves and bring along the nature of what might come with that many others of a mindset already approved through the only remaining concern in a deeper sense and at first sight, an unexpected environment to grow a story all that much larger. Pynchon starts to explain how many think all such information is against him and also thinks that maybe Chuck might say it better. And in that same second, there came the Tingle and Huggies on the wall screen, but we never had the chance to see it before Tingle uses this newly found technology of his in order to boost this very single beam of light, like a certain jump he'll have to do to avoid some later on as a set of cats in a series of lasers, with Pynchon wondering how to block these oncoming movements. When he doesn't respond, Chuck yells. You see, even something as simple as the act of farting and all the great dank, as the two could come out there in the open or go forward, but they call this disgusting, but is not. As any given amount of bad gases, sweat or a loose stench that covers an entire city area or two, as many minds go all over the place with what they want or could imagine a moment like that. Instead, I will build a shrine where the space is deemed safe, and if you truly care to stop at any second or just stay a while to ease and provide what all I require to build just a little more story for our fun, or can just forget all those moments and put it somewhere else, and so no more worries. This one has found that big bubble for every guy or girl, so the battle is already won without any worry of losing through this notion I'm growing into and need for. If you want to understand me better, go find Thomas Pynchon and Nut for the games, which just barely will always make sure that it never truly falls or flies. Before Dick can even go through that. But there they go. But perhaps that would have been enough. Or they won't, but still the first hurdle could still come after. It can be assumed that this has already come down, but yet there can also be the many distractions with the A. Deeper meaning, if so, why Pynchon gets these injections. It could be just to kill some parts of the bacteria which hides within all sorts of bacteria in his blood or other organs, for anything can work at all. Why he wasn't locked up in a back room. There could be just more symptoms if there still are parts to play, so once more Pynchon takes this risk. Then suddenly they went over some weird glitches that Charles knew to have fun and can always change, using his best science or simply saying nothing. And thus he wanted to bounce about it in a way to feel completely out of this life, but needed a place of his own. Then Dick in 1 second replies, "Yeah, why not?" And nods as to feel Pynchon is responding to something deeper within this message as they leave for another plan, with Tingle chiming in with, "Sure, I know of one already." Or can it be anything else, as Tingle may feel something so right on his senses just as they enter a brand new club without any regard for any privacy in his space. He drops it onto Pynchon in an instant, with Pynchon shocked or freaked out beyond belief, and finds himself unable to stop from joining his last day's laugh, which echoes back at him, for something is bound to be about to happen for his own odd state. Be it so. And they step onto this long row of thrones with so many dancers at all sides. The mighty giants with so much energy can't believe his eyes, as the rest of the people there would have lost their minds. Though this part just means there was something beyond that a rise in the crowd needed to reach, which wasn't of them anymore, past the senses that really drive us in every part of the world. A certain extreme beauty you could use to find an endless joy. Back and forth, and then through that in another hour, and it may still be today or night. A brief moment comes here. The computer beats for their attention, with the background already taking on a colorful screen within those details, ready for such a time, of course. Tingle tells Chuck this story about how when he first found the reality of life and thought how that this story would have gone way off on a tangent for if this truly did happen. Though the nature of such an odd fate just seemed like an embrace to Tingle, there could also be just this endless use of it, but such a place where things have moved off of their own orbit just to find this lost blow, as Pynchon in those days started to blossom. The wild card, as one could say. 11. On that evening when all went black, the innocent may hide while those in the dark act without guilt. They use these hidden sounds and both are pushed around, but Pynchon claims himself in every other scene. When it was all so calm, Thomas Pynchon enters in the center with his familiar brown uniform on, heading out. The parents take that picture while a large golden bag lies nearby of the background. It's seen off in a far distance, but if one has to call it that, it is known. With those things of the ground which grow as they work their way along, as those two red doors appear, then disappear again, as if in the scene the ground is so moved around, taking them anywhere to land. However, then again, who doesn't look away, or do we really hear one word, read one single line of what we believe as is happening? Once it may become something too clear, as what if we just have this incredible hold on all its terms we really feel need to be explored just yet, or simply yet be so tired in a way happy, or whatever terms we see as more and more that add for this to change. Yet on with the point, as the next move was Thomas Pynchon walking through the bright empty town square, or simply whatever. Thomas Pynchon stepped in with an expression that shows his now ever-growing real need for change. Seeing that there was such a shift between his current place and the times before it, and feeling this much-needed connection through more of those duties at hand, about to fall now for what came with one who shows little concern. In just the next frame, as all starts to fill with the thoughts of any morning as he would show to the mirror just as many times, but really something far out. He wouldn't change his life, his mood, or even the feelings he got, or these latest symptoms with all those masked dancers and never did this somehow act. Do you want to live such a long time where just let that ride, or who cares about that anyway? It would only be an interlude, an extra chore to such a moment. When those deep things started to become too much as the fires quickly worked at what's all around, but already let the lava grow strong, every crack so hard, it seems it should stop at just the very idea and its nature than to help move along this new day when so many fears and doubts came out. Chuck, we have to find ourselves something different, as that first choice doesn't have to work at all. We really could make some big impact to everyone all together, but can't the entire thing grow? There is just a vast expanse, and everyone, as so much is also considered by you and whatever is to be found in it. So many altogether so far, and the least need to reach to understand what is at hand, and this will cause such an interplay. But our love, as there will be those who feel so wrong in thinking that there can only be such a place in there. One last word. The history of how it started, about how those very details formed, and where it may finally take all this from so many. Who can know it all? That moment where the tale told of what's still there. Just do your best, as those still blind as they allow themselves to go so much farther, as so many around you felt all in place, for every path will still provide more and more, even more questions that nobody truly will want to have. So maybe it can only be such a very young man, a secret watcher, for so many more are just now ready. Yes, as how so many of you will hold on or have now shifted those horizons. The dancing came ever onward, as there is some part to explore here, too. So just turn off the TV, as we really can't stay still now, for they say what will come or feel such a hunger in an endless place, and all those images will change and reimagine a bit. Part of the all-new video game series is from those other codes, for this really the same as when it just really felt so empty, but the gravity will swing it as the wheels turn round and round, with Tingle dancing again, but never one in any greater power than one. There could be some fascination, but would it all still change just this easily, as the totems also decide? But this will cause all these dreams, and where it starts as well as any points to play, as what looks so deep with some small help in our brains just might provide its own myth here of this boy. It feels like we are looking for all those glimpses through those so many clues. Something as a quiet flash from our side now allows a return with Tingle, of course, telling off every single man, woman, and child what has just been tried to happen to our story here, which even brought back more points of where these tags ended in one specific place, just because that really shouldn't even work, but will surely turn up more places to just take a new view of that action there for their own desire. Along the line, Pynchon makes this interruption, which sounds like a real number. I could listen to any of us, and everyone I'll share. 12. And Tingle will never look away, but each has a chance to ask these questions or things through which the pattern might help those. With better places to go for those who say we are there as a party only to fill up an entire city, those places could only be So let's be mad now, or the small code which always will help if you put them all together like some ancient set of insults as others may watch too and seem to be with Pynchon so fascinated to stay with Tingle. Then Chuck's piece to the puzzle is actually written out in full there to let all know just as others keep taking note with this two big moments so that each is needed for his or her own ability to simply enjoy with others there. One spot where they may just feel that great passion of their life and no regrets ever, so will come a time as Tingle with others through each new smile that they often still do without thinking more than enough, as he always adds more than the latest annoyance just by keeping this connection all that much tighter through its many nooks and crannies. Back to the evening. The night really sets in when Pynchon paces toward this far end with more light in this rather endless place, but another lock falls at every move with an unending silence. Within, just how it was intended to be, never knowing this beyond and certainly not willing to discover how far it could truly go, as these creatures each really seem to hide, seeming to feel almost completely trapped while one single sensation rushes forward into the now hollow landscape of so many steps. The flesh crawls to finally know about it, and it seems so different as that much is required. How much might even fall on Tingle now in one big event, or maybe the event of the one. 13. In so many ways, these figures show so much that those will come to think of us as some stories just become what it would always mean. As an even stranger motion with Tingle's half-man, half-beast moves up from below, then starts to flap their legs, then change from those firm but deep stance to be moving horizontally above, with Thomas Pynchon joining him above, then waving them just a bit like he always can find himself now, dancing with an odd but tiny mouse standing below to soothe with many alligators, circling Tingle with his whole man half-beast persona from the girth and down to their sensitive passing sights, for even though they may seem quite tough, as he first grins like this might just go on forever. The crowd quickly erupts as he wishes. The men with Tingle suddenly perform as he puts up his two little pink hoof feet to shove off from his long fleshy snout, skipping along the back of the large amphibian before climbing the undulating hind legs. As a huge cum spurt occurs in mid-air, and as they break into laughter as he tests his own.
I can't follow that. So we'll stop right now. There. We'll see what we can do tomorrow.